Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour. Monsoon session of Indian Parliament to begin today, spread over a month. The session to witness crucial legislative business and intense political debates on key issues. Rising prices and anti-immigration pitch put Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's future at stake. Ishiba vows to stay on even as ruling coalition loses up a majority in the upper house. Iran warns E3 against sanctions, revival ahead of nuclear talks with France, Germany and the UK on Friday, after European nations warned that international sanctions could return if Tehran does not agree for talks. Ecuador extradites notorious drug lord Fito to the United States. Fito to appear before federal court on Monday. And in sports, Grandmaster Koneru Humpy creates history, becomes first ever Indian to reach the FIDE Women's World Cup semi-final. Japan's ruling coalition has lost its majority in the country's upper house after the French far-right Sansito party emerged as one of the biggest winners in Japan's upper house election on Sunday. The party won 14 seats, adding to the single lawmaker it secured in the 248-seat chamber 3 years ago. It has only 3 seats in the more powerful lower house. Second placed was the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, which won 22 of those being contested, followed by the Democratic Party for the People with 17. In the election, 125 seats in the 248-seat upper house were contested in the election. The coalition needed 50 of those up for grabs, but the NHK and others said they had only 147, with the LDP winning 39 and Komito 8, with them 122 deputies. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba expressed his intention to stay in the job. Speaking after polls closed on Sunday, the Prime Minister said that he solemnly accepts the harsh result, but that his focus was on trade negotiations. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba was clinging on Monday even after his coalition disastrously lost the upper house majority in election, as painful new US tariffs loom. From youngest lawmaker to Japan's Prime Minister, we tell you ahead who is Shigeru Ishiba. Ishiba is the son of a regional governor and is from Japan's small Christian minority. He won the party leadership in September on his 5th try. Ishiba became LDP's 10th separate prime minister since 2000 and pledged to create a new Japan and revitalized the depressed rural regions. He called lower house elections for October, but that backfired. LDP suffered its worst result in 15 years. That forced coalition government to bargain with opposition parties to pass the legislation. Ishiba sometimes had clumsy ways, which have been rich fodder for the social media memes. He was also being ridiculed. We'll get to more on that. After being snapped, apparently napping in Parliament. A major challenge has been dealing with US President Donald Trump, who has imposed tariffs on Japanese products. Also, further levies of 25% on other Japanese imports will come into force on 1st of August if there is no trade agreement. Ishiba has sent his tariffs envoy to US 7 times, but no deal has been reached on to yet. All right, our correspondent Siddharth Bhardwaj joins us to get us more. Siddharth, help us understand the political developments in Japan. For the benefit of our viewers, tell us how significant is this and in what tight spot presently is Shigeru Ishiba?
Hi, Preeti. First of all, a very good morning to you. Now, I would like to break it down. First of all, it's a big setback for Shigeru Ishiba, Prime Minister, and also the coalition Komiato. They have failed to secure the number of seats which were required in the recently held upper house elections. The number of seats were 50, and they couldn't secure that. So basically, it's a big setback for Prime Minister, like I said, and there are growing calls from within the party, Preeti, wherein people are saying from within the party, the Prime Minister should resign, should step down. But Shigeru Shiba, in a recent report that we are hearing, is that he said that he will stay on to the position because he has further things to tackle. When it comes to the U.S. tariffs, when it comes to the trade deal between United States and Japan, in terms of tariff, because if that will not happen, then the country will further dip into the economic crisis, which it itself is reeling under now. Now, what happens after this particular thing? San Seato, the party which has emerged winner, with 14 seats, it's something that the entire Japanese population had their eyeballs on from the start of the campaign, from the time when Sohei Kamiya started campaigning. The party secured 14 seats, but then they could not secure the 20 seats which they aimed for, because when you get 20 seats in that parliament, it means that you can submit the budget bills. But now they have secured enough seats for non-spending bills. So this is the situation right now, which is there. And also for the bloc, which is by the LDP and Komiato, they will now at least need support of one opposition party to have any kind of to pass any kind of legislative piece. So that is the big challenge that stands in front of that particular bloc. Pretty ahead of the elections, the bloc had 141 seats. 75 they had already retained in the upper house elections. So that's the thing which they could not secure. The number of seats, like I was telling you. So which means that they will now be needing at least the support of one opposition party to pass any kind of legislature. As far as the San Seato is concerned, from the time the owner, Sohei Kamiya, was campaigning, he was actually addressing the youth, and it seems like that the entire attention has shifted from from this particular bloc to the San Seato party. Why? There's a big reason behind it, because there are few challenges which Japan is facing right now. Number one is immigration. Number two is of rising cost of living, and also inflation. So combined all these things, the slogan which San Seato used is Japanese first. Drawing inspiration from Donald Trump's America First, like the owner said of the party. So that has worked, I believe, in favor of San Seato. So basically, the thing is this: he has promised certain things. He has promised that he will eliminate the national consumption tax, which people of Japan gives to the people, to the Japanese people, the retirees. That is further burdening them because the country is already reeling under economic crisis. And in front of them, a challenge stands, a big challenge of the trade deal, which they have to secure with the United States. The deadline for the same is August 1st. If they do not do that, a tariff of 25% will be there on Japan. The trade between the United States and Japan stands somewhere around 200 billion US dollars, and 150 billion US dollars are the Japan's exports that goes to the US. So imagine when the 25% tariffs will be put on that particular export, that will certainly hit the economy of Japan, which, like I said, number of times that Japan is now reeling under economic crisis. So to overcome that, it seems like the political dynamics has shifted from this particular bloc to the San Seato, where people are now eyeing, and as the owner of that party has also said, Preeti, that Japan should be a nation which serves the interests of the Japanese people. So that is the major concern in these elections. So in that aspect, the elections which were held are really significant, and will now decide the future of Japan as we go forward. Preeti, back to you.
All right, Siddharth, you helped us understand the political developments there, but then for more clarity, why is Shigeru not keen to step down? What is the road ahead for him? You tell us that, the political elections there were intense and that have put him in a tight spot, but then what is it that makes him cling still, and what is it that he refuses to step down?
Preeti, the thing is this, that, if I talk to you, if I go a little back in history, then the LDP leaders, who've lost these elections have stepped down, within 2 months. But then Shigeru Ishiba, it seems like that he's not ready to step down. This is something, which can hamper his reputation. And also, like his statement, he's saying time and again, when, media personnel also asked him that, why are you going to stay? So he said, yes, I'm going to stay. Why? Because, he says that there are some bigger issues that he has to deal with, and that bigger issues are the US tariff that Trump has threatened to impose if the trade deal is not secured between the two countries, for which, like I said, the deadline is 1st of August. Now, if that time, I'd already mentioned, Preeti, that if that don't happen, then the exports will have a tariff of about 25%, will further hit Japan's economy, which is reeling under crisis as of now, with major issues being major issues being the rise in staple, which is rice, and also the cost of living. So for which the Japanese people are really much concerned about. And that's where the Sanseato Party has promised, especially the working age group of Japan, that Japan is a nation which has to serve the interests of Japanese. He said that I'm not saying the fact that foreign people should not, be banned, when it comes to coming into Japan. But then the thing is this, that the job vacancies, the jobs, the businesses, the Japanese people, should be at the helm of it. Japan is also facing a population decline, when it comes to working professionals. So they have to, call other professionals to work. They have around 3.4 million population of foreign nationals, Preeti, which is still 3% of Japan's total population of about 124 million. So this is the entire situation right now, and that's the reason why Shigeru Ishiba is saying that he will not step down. Even after growing calls from within the party itself that he should step down immediately, because the party hasn't served justice to the people of Japan. Back to you, Preeti.
All right, Siddharth, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those details. So that was our correspondent Siddharth telling us more about the political developments in Japan. Japan's top negotiator for trade talks with the United States has left for Washington on Monday, as the US is poised to impose a 25% tariff on imports from Japan starting 1st of August. Japan's economic revitalization minister Ryozi Akazawa left Tokyo's Haneda airport for his 8th trip to Washington for US tariff negotiations. Speaking to reporters before his departure, Akazawa said that negotiations would not be easy, as both Japan and the US need to protect their national interests. He said that he wants to hold sincere and robust discussions to find common ground between the two sides. Iran, Britain, France and Germany will hold nuclear talks in Istanbul on Friday. Iranian diplomats will meet counterparts from Britain, France and Germany, known as the E3, after the trio warned that sanctions could be reimposed on Tehran if it does not return to the negotiating table over its nuclear program. Iran and the United States had held several rounds of nuclear negotiations through Omani mediators before Israel launched its 12-day conflict against Iran. However, US President Donald Trump's decision to join Israel in striking Iranian nuclear facilities effectively ended the talks. The E3 countries last met with Iranian representatives in Geneva on June 21st, just one day before the US strikes. Meanwhile, Iran has ruled out reverting to the old deal. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that the E3 lacks any legal, political and moral standing for reactivating the snapback sanctions. He elaborated in a post on social media on Sunday, saying, I quote, through their actions and statements, including providing political and material support to the recent unprovoked and illegal military aggression of the Israeli regime and the US, the E3 have relinquished their role as participants in the JCPOA. Ecuador's most notorious drug lord has been extradited to the US a year after he was recaptured following a prison escape that sparked a wave of violence across the country. Jose Adolfo Macias, also known as Fito, was transferred on Sunday from a maximum security prison in the port city of Guayaquil to the city's airport, where he was handed over to the U.S. officials. A photograph released by Ecuadorian prison authorities showed Marcos wearing shorts, a T-shirt, a helmet and a bulletproof vest as he was escorted by several heavily armed National Police agents. Fito is set to appear in the U.S. federal court on Monday. He was a taxi driver turned crime boss, agreed in a Quito court last week to be extradited to the U.S. to face the charges. Reports are emerging of a possible meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. That meeting could take place ahead of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, scheduled between October 30th and November 1st, or on the sidelines of the epic event in South Korea. The U.S. and China have been engaged in ongoing efforts to resolve a prolonged tariff war that has disrupted global trade and supply chains. President Trump has set an August 12th deadline for both the sides to finalize a comprehensive and lasting trade agreement. The two countries' most recent high-level contact was on July 11th, when U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Malaysia. Both the sides described the talks as productive and positive, focusing on a roadmap for continuing trade negotiations. While there are reports of meeting between Xi and Trump, but what is confirmed is Chinese President's meeting with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa. The leaders due to visit China to jointly chair the 25th China-EU summit with Chinese Premier Li Keqiang on Thursday. The EU leaders will also meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing on the same day. The two sides will discuss EU-China relations and current geopolitical challenges, including Russia-Ukraine conflict. You're watching DD India News Hour. We're heading for a short break, but after the break, Bedouin fighters head towards village near Syria Sweda as residents report calm in the city after days of violence. Typhoon Wifa batters Hong Kong and Macau. 100 seek shelter amid severe storm damage. Maya tradition soars as dancers perform sacred Palo Volador dance in Guatemala.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic nature, rich heritage and colorful culture.
Johar. अरे it fits perfectly.
Thank you.
Full workout हो गया.
Ready?
Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. Updates from Syria now. Dozens of Bedouin fighters make their way towards the village of Al Mazra in the outskirts of Sweda on Sunday. Though calm was reported in Syria Sweda after the Islamist-led government announced that Bedouin fighters had withdrawn from the predominantly Druze city, and a U.S. envoy signaled that a deal to end days of fighting was being implemented. The fighting began a week ago with clashes between Bedouin and Druze fighters. Damascus then sent troops to quell the fighting, but they were accused of carrying out widespread violations against the Druze and were hit by Israeli strikes before withdrawing under a truce agreed on Wednesday. The Syrian presidency had announced a new ceasefire early on Saturday, but it quickly collapsed into renewed fighting, underlining the challenge interim President Ahmed al-Shara faces in asserting authority over the fractured nation. London's Royal Opera House on Sunday condemned as wholly inappropriate the actions of a performer who had held up a Palestinian flag on stage at the end of a performance. The action took place on the closing night of the production, which had enjoyed an uneventful 11-night run in Covent Garden up until that point. The protester appeared to be performing in the chorus of the show. The incident comes after numerous artists offered messages of support for people in Gaza at this year's Glastonbury Festival. At least 9 people were killed in a head-on collision between a pickup truck and an SUV near Montecristi, western Ecuador, early on Sunday morning. Authorities suspect one vehicle veered out of its lane that caused the accident. Overcrowding may have contributed to the high death toll, officials said. Traffic accidents remain a leading cause of death in Ecuador. From January to May 2025, over 4,700 crashes left 565 dead. Last year, nearly 2,300 traffic fatalities were recorded, with many blamed on reckless or inexperienced driving. Indonesia's Coast Guard battled to douse the ship that caught fire off the coast of Sulawesi. According to local reports, 5 people were killed in the blaze, while 284 others were able to escape. Dramatic video footage showed thick smoke billowing from the vessel as rescuers worked to assist the survivors. The cause of the fire remains unknown and authorities have launched an investigation. The incident adds to a string of maritime safety concerns in Indonesia's busy waters. In Mexico City, dozens of residents led the second anti-gentrification march on Sunday. The protest came after officials announced a 14-point plan to address the capital's housing and gentrification problems, with residents saying they've been priced out of their neighborhoods in part because of over-tourism, short-term home rentals, and an influx of people and businesses with higher purchasing power. However, Mexico City Mayor Clara Brugada said that living in Mexico City should not be a privilege for a few, but rather a guaranteed right for all its residents. Let's get to global weather updates now. Torrential rains that slammed South Korea for 5 days have left 17 people dead and 11 others missing. The Interior and Safety Ministry said that about 2,730 people remain evacuated from their homes on Sunday. The rain stopped in most of South Korea on Sunday, and heavy rain alerts had been subsequently lifted throughout the country, the ministry officials said. Southern regions have received up to 600 to 800 millimeters of rain since July 16th. President Lee Jae-myung offered condolences to the victims of the heavy downpours and announced plans to designate severely affected areas as special disaster zones, enabling increased government aid and recovery support. Rains from Typhoon Wifa pounded Hong Kong on Sunday as the storm skirted southwards before making a landfall on the coast of China's Guangdong province. The storm left Hong Kong with fallen trees and damaged scaffolding and forced over 200 people to seek refuge in temporary shelters. Hong Kong's highest tropical cyclone warning, T10, was in effect for around 7 hours but was downgraded to the third highest, that is T8 warning, as Typhoon Wifa departed the city. Neighboring casino hub Macau issued its own top-level typhoon warning shortly after noon, with authorities suspending all public transportation services. The storm is currently moving towards the west with heavy rains and strong winds to the coastal regions. Vietnam's Prime Minister put coastal provinces on emergency footing for Typhoon Wifa, saying it could cause flooding and landslides as airlines cancelled flights ahead of the storm's expected landfall early on Tuesday. The storm is forecast to cross Vietnam's northern coast between Quang Ninh and Ninh Binh provinces, and the National Weather Agency has said that it is carrying heavy rains that could cause dangerous floods and mudslides. Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh sent an urgent message to coastal provinces on Sunday night to call boats ashore, evacuate people from flood-prone areas, prepare food supplies and rescue equipment, and secure communication infrastructure. Wifa is expected to complicate the search for people still missing after a tourist boat capsized during a thunderstorm in Halong Bay in northern Vietnam on Saturday, killing at least 38 people. Officials in Texas have significantly reduced the number of people reported missing following the devastating floods earlier this month, stating that the search is now focused on 3 individuals in the state's hardest hit region. Recovery teams are searching along the Guadalupe River in Kerr County. This is the epicenter of the flooding for the remaining missing individuals, previously estimated at around 100. Dozens of deaths occurred in other counties, and the body of a Burnett County fire chief is still missing. At least 135 people died in central Texas, including more than 3 dozen children, after strong downpours sparked flash flooding at the beginning of the July 4th holiday weekend. Earlier on July 11th, US President Donald Trump and his wife Melania visited the areas affected by the disaster. The Indian Met Department on Monday has issued orange alert for very heavy rains in Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. The Met Department had issued an orange alert for heavy to very heavy rains in Una, Bilaspur, Hamirpur, Kangra, Solan, Mandi and Sirmaur districts, while yellow alerts are in effect for Chamba, Kullu and Shimla districts. The forecast predicted heavy rains at isolated places over the next 72 hours. On Tuesday, orange alerts are in place for Sirmaur and Solan, while Una and Bilaspur will face similar warnings on Wednesday before the weather is expected to improve from Thursday. The southern states of Karnataka, Telangana and Tamil Nadu are also likely to get continued heavy to very heavy rainfall over the week. For other parts of northwest India, the IMD has predicted heavy rains over Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, West Uttar Pradesh, East Uttar Pradesh, West Rajasthan, East Rajasthan and Haryana till Thursday. Moderate rainfall has also been predicted for Delhi NCR during the next 24 hours. Moderate rainfall is expected in the national capital in the 24 hours. And from here, we'll take you to the Parliament, where the monsoon session is to begin today, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi is interacting with the media persons there. We'll take you live there. Even as we speak, we told you that the monsoon session will be beginning from today onwards, and it will be a 1-month-long session. The monsoon session, as we told you, will begin today, and it will be spanning over a month. This session is expected to feature significant legislative business and intense political debates. From key amendment bills to discussions on national security and governance, both the houses will face a packed agenda. And up on your screens, we have Prime Minister interacting with Kiren Rijiju and also Arjun Ram Meghwal, Jitendra Singh in vision, and here the Prime Minister is readying to interact with the media persons outside the Parliament House. This is a custom that has been followed, where the Prime Minister, before the start of the session, interacts with the media person and sets the agenda for the session ahead.
मानसून सत्र में आप सभी मीडिया जगत के लोगों का स्वागत है। साथियों, मानसून नवीनता और नवसर्जन का प्रतीक है, और अब तक जो खबरें मिली हैं, देश में मौसम बहुत ही अच्छे ढंग से आगे बढ़ रहा है। कृषि को लाभदायक मौसम की खबरें हैं, और बारिश किसानों की अर्थव्यवस्था, देश की अर्थव्यवस्था, ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था, और इतना ही नहीं, हर परिवार की अर्थव्यवस्था में एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण होता है। अब तक जो मुझे जानकारी दी गई है, उस हिसाब से पिछले 10 वर्ष में जो पानी का भंडार हुआ है इस बार, वो करीब करीब 3 गुना हुआ है, जिसका आने वाले दिनों में भी देश के अर्थतंत्र को बहुत लाभ होगा। साथियों, ये मॉनसून सत्र राष्ट्र के लिए ये बहुत ही गौरवपूर्ण सत्र है। कि मॉनसून सत्र राष्ट्र के लिए एक अपने आप में विजयोत्सव का रूप है। और जब मैं कहता हूं कि सत्र राष्ट्र गौरव और विजयोत्सव का सत्र है, तो सबसे पहले तो मैं पहली बार इंटरनेशनल स्पेस स्टेशन पर भारत का तिरंगा झंडा वहां लहराना, ये हर देशवासी के लिए गौरव की पल है। देश में साइंस टेक्नोलॉजी के प्रति, इनोवेशन के प्रति नया उमंग और उत्साह भरने वाली ये सफल यात्रा रही है। और पूरे सांसद, लोकसभा राज्यसभा दोनों सदन देशवासी जिस गौरव का अनुभव कर रहे हैं उसमें एक स्वर से जुड़ेंगे, एक स्वर से इसका यशगान होगा। जो भारत को अंतरिक्ष में नई ऊंचाइयां पर पहुंचाने वाले जो भावी कार्यक्रम हैं, उनके लिए भी प्रेरक बनेगा, प्रोत्साहक बनेगा। साथियों, ये मॉनसून सत्र एक विजयोत्सव है। पूरी दुनिया ने भारत की सैन्य शक्ति का, भारत के सैन्य के सामर्थ्य का रूप देखा है। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में भारत की सेना ने जो लक्ष्य निर्धारित किया था 100% अचीव किया। आतंकियों के आकाओं के घर में जाकर के 22 मिनट के भीतर भीतर ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के तहत उसको जमींदोज कर दिया गया। और मैंने बिहार की एक कार्यक्रम में इसकी घोषणा की थी, जो हमारी सैन्य शक्ति ने बहुत ही कम समय में सिद्ध करके दिखा दिया। और इसमें मेड इन इंडिया सैन्य शक्ति का ये नया स्वरूप, इस पर भी दुनिया बहुत आकर्षित हुई है। इन दिनों विश्व के जिन जिन लोगों से मिलना होता है तो भारत के इस मेड इन इंडिया जो औजार तैयार हो रहे हैं, उसके प्रति दुनिया का आकर्षण बढ़ रहा है। मुझे विश्वास है कि जब सदन इस विजयोत्सव को एक स्वर में विजय के भाव से इस सत्र के दरमियान उन ओजस्वी तेजस्वी भावनाओं को प्रकट करेगा, तो भारत की सैन्य शक्ति को बल मिलेगा, प्रोत्साहन मिलेगा, देशवासियों को प्रेरणा मिलेगी और सैन्य क्षेत्र में जो रिसर्च, इनोवेशन और मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हो रहे हैं, मेड इन इंडिया डिफेंस इक्विपमेंट बन रहे हैं, उसको भी एक बल मिलेगा। और जो भारत के नौजवानों के लिए नए रोजगार के अवसर पैदा करेगा। साथियों, ये दशक हम एक प्रकार से देख सकते हैं कि शांति और प्रगति कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर के आगे बढ़ने के कदम कदम पर प्रगति के एहसास करते रहे हैं। देश कई प्रकार की हिंसक वारदातों का शिकार रहा है, लंबे अरसे तक शिकार रहा है। देश आजाद हुआ तब से ये समस्या को हम झेल रहे हैं, चाहे आतंकवाद हो, नक्सलवाद हो। कोई प्रारंभ में शुरू हुआ होगा, कोई बाद में शुरू हुआ होगा, लेकिन आज नक्सलवाद का, माओवाद का दायरा बहुत तेजी से सिकुड़ रहा है। माओवाद को, नक्सलवाद को जड़ से उखाड़ने के संकल्प के साथ देश के सुरक्षा बल एक नए आत्मविश्वास से, तेज गति से सफलता की ओर कदम रख रहे हैं। और मैं गर्व से कह सकता हूं, देश में सैकड़ों जिले नक्सल की चपेट में से निकल करके आज मुक्ति का सांस ले रहे हैं। हमें गर्व है कि बम, बंदूक और पिस्तौल के सामने हमारा देश का संविधान जीत रहा है। हमारे देश का संविधान विजयी हो रहा है। देश के उज्जवल भविष्य के लिए साफ दिख रहा है कि कल तक जो रेड कॉरिडोर थे, वो आज ग्रीन ग्रोथ जोन में परिवर्तित होते नजर आ रहे हैं। साथियों, एक के बाद ऐसी घटनाएं देशभक्ति के लिए, देश की भलाई के लिए संसद में पहुंचे हुए हर माननीय सांसद के लिए गौरव का पल है। और संसद के इस सत्र में ये गौरव गान पूरा देश सुनेगा, हर सांसद से सुनेगा, हर दल से सुनेगा। साथियों, आर्थिक क्षेत्र में भी जब 2014 में आप सबने हमें जिम्मेवारी दी, देश फ्रेजाइल 5 की अवस्था से गुजर रहा था। 2014 के पहले वैश्विक अर्थव्यवस्था में हम 10वें नंबर पर थे और आज भारत तेज गति से दुनिया की तीसरे नंबर की अर्थव्यवस्था बनने की दिशा में आगे बढ़ रहा है, दरवाजे पर दस्तक दे रहा है। इन दिनों 25 करोड़ गरीबों का गरीबी से बाहर निकलना, जिसको विश्व की अनेक संस्थाएं सराहना कर रही है। देश में एक जमाना था 2014 के पहले, जब महंगाई का दर, इन्फ्लेशन रेट डबल डिजिट में हुआ करता था। आज 2% के आसपास आकर के देश के सामान्य मानवी के जीवन में राहत बन गया है, सुविधा बन गया है। लो इन्फ्लेशन के सामने हाई ग्रोथ एक अच्छे विकास यात्रा की दिशा है। साथियों, डिजिटल इंडिया, यूपीआई आज भारत के एक नए सामर्थ्य को दुनिया देख रही है, पहचान रही है और ज्यादातर देश में उसके प्रति एक आकर्षण पैदा हो रहा है। यूपीआई ने फिनटेक की दुनिया में अपने एक नाम कमाया है। रियल टाइम डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन दुनिया में सबसे ज्यादा हो रहे हैं। दुनिया में जितने हो रहे हैं, अकेले भारत में उससे ज्यादा हो रहे हैं। साथियों, पिछले दिनों इंटरनेशनल लेबर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का एक वैश्विक समागम था और उसमें भारत ने बहुत बड़ी ऊंचाई प्राप्त की है। आईएलओ का कहना है कि 90 करोड़ से ज्यादा लोग भारत में अब सोशल सिक्योरिटी के दायरे में हैं। ये अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ा अचीवमेंट है। उसी प्रकार से वैश्विक संस्था WHO ने ये कहा है कि भारत अब आंख की जो बीमारी आमतौर पर बारिश के सीजन में ज्यादा देखी जाती थी, ट्रैकोमा, अब भारत को WHO ने ट्रैकोमा फ्री घोषित किया है। तो आरोग्य के क्षेत्र में भी ये अपने आप में एक महत्वपूर्ण भारत के लिए सिद्धि है। साथियों, पहलगाम की क्रूर हत्या, अत्याचार, नरसंहार, पूरी दुनिया चौंक उठी थी। आतंकवादी और आतंकवादी के आके दुनिया का ध्यान उनकी तरफ केंद्रित हुआ था और उस समय दल हित छोड़ करके देश हित में हमारे ज्यादातर दलों के प्रतिनिधि, ज्यादातर राज्यों के प्रतिनिधि विश्व भ्रमण किया, दुनिया के अनेक देशों में गए और एक स्वर से दुनिया के सामने आतंकवादियों का आका पाकिस्तान को बेनकाब करने का एक बहुत सफल अभियान चलाया। मैं आज राष्ट्रहित में किए गए इस महत्वपूर्ण कार्य के लिए उन सभी सांसदों की सराहना करना चाहता हूं, सभी दलों की सराहना करना चाहता हूं और उसने देश में एक सकारात्मक वातावरण पैदा किया। विश्व ने भारत की बात को स्वीकार करने की दिशा में अपने मन के द्वार खोले और इसके लिए ये हमारे सांसदगण, हमारे राजनीतिक दल सराहना करने के मेरे लिए सौभाग्य है। साथियों, हम जानते हैं कि ये स्पिरिट, एक स्वर, एक एकता का वातावरण देश को कितना उत्साह से भर देता है। विजयोत्सव का ये पर्व इस मानसून सत्र में भी उसी भाव से प्रकट होगा। देश की सैन्य शक्ति को सराहना करेगा, देश के सामर्थ्य का गौरवगान करेगा और देश के 140 करोड़ नागरिकों को नई प्रेरणा का कारण बनेगा। मुझे विश्वास है कि हम सब मिलकर के डिफेंस के क्षेत्र में आत्मनिर्भर होने के इन प्रयासों को बल दें, सेना के सामर्थ्य की सराहना करें और मैं आज देशवासियों के सामने जरूर कहूंगा और देश के राजनीतिक दलों से भी कहूंगा कि देश ने एकता की ताकत देखी है, एक स्वर का सामर्थ्य क्या होता है देखा है। तो सदन में से भी सभी माननीय सांसद उसको बल दें, उसको आगे बढ़ाएं। और मैं जरूर कहूंगा, राजनीतिक दल अलग अलग हैं, हर एक का अपना एक एजेंडा है, अपनी एक भूमिका है, लेकिन मैं इस वास्तविकता को स्वीकार करता हूं कि दल हित में मत भले न मिले, लेकिन देश हित में मन जरूर मिले। इसी एक भावना के साथ इस मानसून सत्र से देश के विकास यात्रा को बल देने वाले, देश की प्रगति को बल देने वाले, देश के नागरिकों को सामर्थ्य देने वाले अनेक विधेयक प्रस्तावित हैं। सदन विस्तृत चर्चा करके उसको भी पारित करेगा। मेरी सभी माननीय सांसदों से उत्तम डिबेट चलाने के लिए शुभकामनाएं हैं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
So that was Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the Parliament House addressing the media persons ahead of the monsoon session of Parliament that begins today. This is a custom that has been followed where the Prime Minister sets the agenda for the session ahead and also urges the political parties to stand united and help in smooth passage of the legislative business that is enlisted for that particular session. In his address to the media persons, the Prime Minister talked of how monsoon is evident of the new beginnings, and he talked of how agriculture has got a boost because of the ample rains received this year. In the last 10 years, the water reserves has increased by 3-fold, he said. The monsoon session is a very important session and it is a kind of a Vijay Utsav for the nation. For the first time, an Indian flag at the International Space Station was a proud moment for every Indian, and this will be acknowledged during the session, the Prime Minister said. The world was also witness to how the world was also witness to the military prowess of India during Operation Sindoor. The artillery manufactured under Made in India initiative has also caught the praise of the rest of the world. He also talked of how this decade is symbolic of the peace that is in sync with progress. He talked of how Naxalism is also diminishing in the country with the will of the security forces, and many districts in the country are now Naxal-free, and how the country's constitution is winning against guns and battles. He talked of how districts in red corridors are now part of the green growth zone. 25 crore people have come out of poverty, he noticed, and inflation has reduced considerably. Low inflation and high growth are symbolic of the progress India is making. He also talked of how world is taking note of digitalization with UPI and record digital transactions in the country earning laurels in the fintech world. He also said that WHO has designated India as trachoma-free, and he also appreciated how our political fraternity united in sending the message against terrorism emanating from Pakistan. He hoped that this spirit of unity will continue on the floor of the House during the monsoon session as well. To get us more, our correspondent Dibyendu Mondal is joining us. Dibyendu, good morning. We had an elaborate address by the Prime Minister to the media persons where he enlisted the agenda, the tone and the agenda of the session ahead. You get us more as we see the monsoon session begin today. What is the legislative business that is to be taken up?
Well, Preeti, good morning. And, like every year, and in fact, before the beginning of each session, this is a customary address by the Prime Minister before the beginning of any parliamentary session. And of course, in each, before the beginning of each session, the Prime Minister basically sets the tone and also enlists what the agenda of the government would be during that particular session. So therefore, Preeti, I was listening to the Prime Minister's speech, and some of the most important highlights, which perhaps gives us a sense that how the Parliament session the government would like to conduct, is of course the fact that the government would celebrate the military prowess of the Indian Army, who had successfully conducted the Operation Sindoor and targeted deep inside Pakistan all these terrorists in fact, these hideouts that were there deep inside Pakistan and how the army had hit in with precision. And he also mentioned about, remember how all the political parties had risen above their political agendas, above their political aspirations, and had united for one reason, that is India or Bharat. And therefore, he expects that the political parties coming in from different ideologies would show the same respect for India and for Bharat inside Parliament when the government conducts business, because Parliament is a serious business where the government, tries to bring in bills for the welfare of the people, and debates and discussions do take place, and that is part of a healthy parliamentary democracy where opposition parties in the government debates and discusses on important legislation that would affect millions of people in India. So therefore, the government wants that how these political parties had shown had risen above politics, has risen above their own political ideologies and stood for India and Bharat at the time of Operation Sindoor. They show that same commitment towards the development of India during this particular monsoon session. And he also mentioned about, Preeti, if you remember, about how India's flag for the first time had
Yes.
been, was shown at the International Space Station. So therefore, that is also a very, very proud moment for India. The government could also perhaps list out, the steps that the government is taking in order to send manned mission to the International Space Station on its own, which is ISRO could probably, there is already a Gaganyaan program that is being taken up by ISRO. The government could perhaps push more on this, that, we have had one successful Indian going into the International Space Station, and now it is time for India's, vehicle taking in the Gaganyaan mission into the International Space Station. So therefore, these are some of the key aspects that the government would take up. Also, Preeti, how the government has been able to, over the last one decade, eliminate Naxalism from the red corridors of India. There were many districts in India that were threatened with Naxalism in the past. And now these red corridors have turned into the corridor of green and growth. So therefore, he terms it as green growth corridors. And how the nation is progressing over the last 10 years under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his government. He also did talk about how inflation has been arrested, how inflation earlier in the previous regimes were at double digits, and now the inflation has come down to the minimal level. So therefore, the story of development, the story of progress, the story of the developing Bharat or Vikasit Bharat is on track, and how the Indian and also how his government is trying to ensure in the defense sector that India becomes Atmanirbhar, and we don't have to go shopping for our guns to different countries, and Indian manufacturers are capable, and the government will facilitate to help
Right.
indigenous defense manufacturing. So therefore, setting the tone for the parliamentary session, this particular monsoon session, and key important bills, many important bills are lined up that would be debated and discussed over the next 1 month, which is approximately 21 sittings in about 32 days of this particular monsoon session. So therefore, Preeti, this is a customary address where the Prime Minister sets the tone for how the
Yes,
monsoon
indeed.
session is going to be conducted over the next couple of weeks.
Yes, Dibyendu, for every session, we also have an all-party meeting that is convened a day before. And talking of the meeting, the Prime Minister did put forth the tone. He did set the tone for the session ahead. But then a lot also depends on the opposition, the concerns which the opposition plans to take up on the floor of the House. What is your evaluation of how do we expect the opposition to take up the issues of concern this time around? Because we've seen how disruptions marked the last session, the winter session, and also when we talk of the concerns of the opposition, what could the opposition bring to the table in this session?
Well, Preeti, of course, the opposition parties have already set their agenda, and they have been demanding. We have been speaking to a couple of also these opposition leaders. We have been hearing their sound bites that have been coming in. The opposition leaders are saying that they want a discussion on Operation Sindoor. They also want a discussion on the Bihar electoral rolls revision that has taken place. They also want a discussion on the Air India crash, the unfortunate Air India crash that has taken place in Ahmedabad. So therefore, the opposition seems that they want to corner the government on multiple issues in the parliament. in both the houses of parliament, both as well as in Rajya Sabha. The opposition's strategy seems to be very clear that they have also been demanding a response from the Prime Minister on the floor of the House on a couple of issues, including the Pahalgam terrorist attack, and also on the issue that on the issue of the Donald Trump's statement, U.S. President Donald Trump's statement on ceasefire. These are some of the issues that could come up, and the opposition could create a ruckus in the parliament. But however, it will only be mature of the opposition to let discussions take place, and the government has clearly said, even yesterday, Parliamentary Affairs Minister Kiren Rijiju, after he held a meeting with all the opposition parties, in fact, all the floor leaders of the parliamentary political parties in both the houses of parliament, he did make it very clear that the government is up for discussion on any issues, and any issues under the constitution, and in a legal manner, abiding by the law. And therefore, there are notices, there are parliamentary procedures through which notices must be given, and there are ministers who would respond to the questions that would be raised by the members of parliament from different political parties, and the ministers are apt to give replies on various issues. So therefore, the government is clear that they want the parliamentary, in fact, the monsoon session of parliament to function, because the government has multiple important legislative business lined up, and they want the session to function smoothly. But of course, Preeti, before I end it, it is up to the opposition parties to ensure that the parliament functions smoothly, and they behave in a matured, responsible, democratic parliamentary politicians.
All right, Dubendra, we leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those details. So that was our correspondent, Dubendra Mondal, spelling out more on what can be expected during the monsoon session. And just a while back, we saw Prime Minister address the media persons where he set the tone for the monsoon session of Parliament that begins today. It's a month-long session, and we will keep you updated. Meanwhile, we'll turn focus to sports updates. Grandmaster Koneru Humpy has created history by becoming the first ever Indian to reach the semi-finals of the FIDE Women's World Cup. India's number one, Humpy, defeated China's Eugene Song in the first game of the quarterfinal and then settled for a draw in Game 2. A draw in the second game was enough to reach the semi-final, as she finished with a scoreline of 1.5 to 0.5. Humpy will next face top-seeded Chinese Li Tingyue, who defeated Nana Zagnidze in their quarterfinal. In the other quarterfinal, in the All-Indian clash between Harika and Divya Deshmukh, this will be decided through the tie breaks after both their games ended in a draw. Meanwhile, the fourth Indian in the last 8, R. Vaishali, suffered an exit from the event after losing to China's Tan Zhongyi. With that, we end this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can download the respective QR codes. We'll be back with more news as it peaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.